I just crossed the 500-mile mark since coming out here to the East Coast. So it finally got cold enough again last night where I could get into my sleeping bag, which was quite pleasant after all of the warm, sweaty nights out here. I also had a dog barking at me sometime late last night. I think it was up on the trail there. The local at the Reliance Fish and Tackle lady said they get a lot of people like dumping dogs out here since it's a really rural area. It didn't get close enough where I was actually worried, unlike that time on the ADT. It is not quite down to start hiking in Long John's levels, but it is noticeably cooler today. One of the problems with doing the videos in the morning, or one of the challenges I should say, is that usually takes up all my time and then I gotta rush to get out before it gets too late. So I'm often lagging behind on looking ahead. I do apparently have a bit of a dry stretch in this section though. It looks like things are easing off at least a little, just as far as water challenges. My feet have been holding up okay. They hurt a little bit, but that's what happens when you're 500, however many miles in here. So as of this morning, I have a little over 100 miles to Springer. I'm kind of figuring that today will be a good gauge for what the remainder is going to be like. I only vaguely remember the section I used on the ECT. And I was told this section was kind of the brushiest and the least maintained. So see how far I get today, and then I can kind of start nailing down plans and figuring out, am I going to get to Springer and take a day or two off? Am I going to get to Springer and my ride will be ready? Or am I going to wrap around and maybe do a day or two on the AT? Though if I do that, I am going to have to figure out a resupply. Not 100% sure, but I seem to remember, like I went into town at Springer, and then I think I had to survive off a couple of days worth of moon pies due to a box issue at a hostel at the southern end. I don't think I'd ever had a moon pie before that, and ever since then I have never had the urge to have one ever again. Some of the details are a little fuzzy, but at the time I had started to get people, following my little tiny channel as I hiked up through Florida and everything. And a few people wanted to send me a resupply box. And we had somebody send a resupply box, and some of the things they had sent were not the easiest to carry, like liquid espresso shots and things like that. And the box had been beat up, so there were some things that were like split open and I couldn't use. So I ended up being a little short on calories to get me to my next stop. Went and looked at the hiker box, and the hiker box had a massive amount of moon pies. Based on the limited amount of, let's just call it popular thru hiker media I've seen, people seem to go heavy on the junk food, at least some of them. That's never really worked for me. I know some people will look at some of the things I have and dislike them, but I mean, the majority of my diet out here is peanut butter, rice, and beans, and a subset of bars that I find a little less sugary and empty than a lot of other options out there. So having to do straight junk food like that for a couple of days was not my favorite. I do have some fair size climbs up ahead. At about 23 miles, it looks like it's Big Frog Mountain, and I vaguely recall one of the Nobos mentioning that as one of the challenging sections. They had also mentioned that climb after Topoco to the Hangover, and I hadn't really taken note of it at the time, and then that's the thing that slowed me down, and then I had to push in the dark because I was running so late. I should have plenty of food. I have, at the very least, enough dinners to get me through most of the next week. And it is 56 miles until my hitch access to Blue Ridge, which is where I plan to get my next resupply. Oh. Yeah, that's me. I did splurge today since my feet have been feeling a little beat up. Swapped into my clean pair of socks. The other pair had about 5 days on them, and they tend to get kind of encrusted with sweat, dirt, etc. I used to spend more time trying to wash them on trail. I don't really anymore, at least out here, as much, because they're harder to dry. If I have a really long stretch, I will. I also used to hang them on the back of my pack. I remember, I think the second time I did the JMT, I even had these little clips with me because I thought I was going to be oh so clever, and it just made sense because then you can constantly be washing socks and hanging them and drying them. The problem is, when you are in a trail where you are pushing through brush quite a bit, things like that come off. Every year on the long trails, there are multiple people losing major things off the back of their pack. We're talking like entire tents going off, things like that. So I am really paranoid about having anything that is not secured. Part of what I like about having the sleeping pad up top like this, other than it gives me a little more visibility in hunting season, is I will put things on top of that and I'll feel a little more secure. Partially it's the V-strap holds it on a little better than those bungees on the back of my pack. And partially is I can see and constantly verify they're still there. Plus, you know, it's on a flat instead of hanging off the back. And even on this trail, which is fairly lowly trafficked, I can't tell you how many clothing items I have come across either on the trail or hanging beside the trail. So I will wash them. The ideal way to wash them is to get some water in a Ziploc or something so you can swish it around away from the water source. The option of just doing it straight in the water source, I won't say I've never done that, but of course the problem with that is picture you're camped and getting your water out of this beautiful stream, and then a couple hundred feet upstream there's a large group of Boy Scouts that are watching like socks and underwear. Nobody really wants that. Specifically with socks though, I mean, I have to really work them in the water multiple times, swish them around, all of that, in order to really get all the dirt out. So it seems to be a combination of the fabric getting less soft and dirt working its way into the fabric, dirt getting kind of like caked on the bottom due to compression and sweat, and trying to get that off takes a while. So swish around, wring them out, swish around, wring them out, and I have to do that, you know, half dozen times or more at least. And I see people with whole like clotheslines set up in camp. At least for me, when through hiking, I get in relatively late. I leave relatively early. You know, could I have hung stuff out this morning? Yeah, it would have been cold and frosty, if anything. If you're stopping early enough in the afternoon, you can make that work. But if anything, I have better luck stopping during the day. That is far easier to do out in the western states where it's less humid. I distinctly remember a few times with Jen trying to dry things out after days of rain along the AT, and basically having to give up and just wait till our next hotel stay and make sure and find a hotel with an AC that we could blast, freezing our butts off, but helping us dry stuff. I have been thinking back kind of nostalgically to whatever year I finished the CDT, and I was running around New Mexico so late until early to mid-December. It was colder. Getting out of the sleeping bag in the morning is a little bit harder since you're all cozy and warm and it's so cold to get going, but oh, it was so much nicer having dry layers. Because here, even with the chilly morning, I am just soaking through my hiking layers every time I hit a hill like this. I do really remember New Mexico fondly. I'm sure part of it is just with all the challenges, pounding through storms above Silver City, the struggles getting through the Black Hills, having that calf injury and worrying that I may be off season and not make it, only to finish up in suitably epic circumstances for my Triple Crown. Just left me with a warm fuzzy for that entire section. Granted, I guess it is a rare trail I don't have a giant warm fuzzy for, looking back on. Maybe a few of the shorter ones. The Lone Star Trail was not something I really will be dwelling on my deathbed, except for maybe, well, hey, I don't have to go through that again. And that wasn't even the trail. Trail was fine. It was the Noro we caught in the middle right around Christmas. I've been talking to Jen because every now and then when I actually have access to a laptop or something I can type on properly, I do enjoy writing. I had toyed with fixing up my PCT journals into something a little cleaner because they're just blog posts with misspellings and my own mutilations of the English language. But I've been toying with the idea of kind of, instead of just trying to do that, doing something that's more about the entire last 5 years and how we got here sort of thing. I'm saying I could write something like, for the love of the trails, journey from the cubicle into the woods or something like that. Problem is, I get all excited and I'll want to write stuff out here when I am energized and happier, and then I will get back into town and be dealing with stuff and usual mental health issues that always happen back there, and all of a sudden I don't have that same inspiration. But who knows, I actually do have a fair amount written about the PCT and some off and on about the Key West to Canada thing. My issue has always just been any exposure to any sort of through hiker, long trail media has always been, it hasn't really resonated with me. For example, I was excited that I'd done the John Muir Trail and I went to watch a documentary, and there was something that I'd always heard about, mile and a half, and I didn't even make it 5 minutes in because it was a whole bunch of MTV reality show style interviews where people were talking about it being the trip of a lifetime. And, I am all about experiences being awesome and life-changing. However, I have a problem with calling anything the trip of the lifetime, just because hopefully there's more stuff to come. Because if this I'm on right now is my trip of a lifetime, then I'm just sitting around waiting to die. So I usually jokingly correct people that it's not the most awesome thing ever, it's just the most awesome thing I'm doing this season. Did doing my first through hike change me in a lot of ways? Did it change how I think? Yada yada. Oh yeah, sure. But that wasn't the end of a journey. I remember when I got towards the end of the PCT, somebody who was a big fan of Cheryl Strayed was posting on my social media, and they were talking about how I was about to go home and then I could hang up the pack and the boots and look on them fondly from time to time or something like that. And I'm like, dude, I appreciate the sentiment here, but I am literally getting back on trail 3 weeks after I finish. That pack and those shoes got more work to do. Oh, nothing like catching a nice berry bramble to the crotch when I'm not paying attention. So that was kind of one of the challenges when I was toying around with the PCT thing. Cool adventure, I want to remember it. I have grandparents who would be oh so thrilled if there was an actual book or something I could hand them, they could show off to friends, etc. But each one of our big adventures, while epic, has always just been kind of the next step with more plans to come. Even if everything fell apart, even if I had to go back to a cubicle and just scraping to get by for however long, there's just something about me that refuses to go, oh yeah, that was a cool thing, and now I just do this, and I shall look back on that. And I have talked to a few people that have done books, at least in the cases that I am remembering. It was basically they had a daily journal and they just kind of adapted that. So even when I was like, I knew the person I was really interested, it just was a little too, then this happened, then this happened, then this happened, and I want stories and narrative, I guess. So I think that's why my brain's kind of going this way. Because that way I can kind of tell the story of how things have happened, how we've developed off trail, the van, and this, that, and the other, the shorter trails, and not get bogged down in, okay, I got to say something about this section of Oregon because I need to tell the story of my entire hike. But nothing really happened. I was just kind of heads down, moseying along. So we'll see. At the moment, I have a high amount of enthusiasm for it. My problem is the only things that I find satisfying to produce are things that come from enthusiasm. If I'm just kind of grinding it out, if I'm, writing or doing videos or anything else like that, it's less satisfying, less enjoyable. So we'll see. And as always, my problem is if I was going to write anything, I'm generally not off trail long enough to actually finish it. The amount of panic I had for the 3 months between the PCT and the Key West hikes, where I was trying just to reformat my journal notes and get them up on my blog with pictures, was ridiculous, which was a big part of why I switched to the videos. Not to mention, for anything other than the Pacific Crest Trail where I wasn't doing videos, I have the videos, I have the dailies. They were done from on trail when I was in whatever mindset, and I am very aware from others around me or myself just how much when you write stuff, especially later, you have a tendency to kind of clean that up and change how you recall things. Might make for a better traditional thru hiker narrative, but I don't know. Not for me. I could see though, start with the PCT or maybe the warm-up trips before that. Just kind of talk about what was going on, where we were on all of them, throw in the occasional story, and then I could kind of use the illness this past summer as a good kind of capstone, / coming out here, since the big thing that drove us to take the big leap and make a chance in 2019 was just how many friends were going through major health issues, and seeing people who had dreams of doing things like the PCT and were actively losing those, either because of, new health realities or the fact that they passed away. I feel like I've lost way too many friends way too young the last 10 years or so. And of course, just got a little bit of reception, talked to Jen really briefly, partially to hear how happy she will be because I am hiking in or towards Little Frog Wilderness, and she likes cute names like that, but apparently more car issues. So her little Mazda 2, I think, is on its way to CarMax, and we have yet another financial crisis. to say, I am constantly surprised by some of the signage. There's a lot of work that's gone into this trail. Guess it makes sense. Close proximity to the AT probably gets more traffic than a lot of places. The comments through here are people saying don't take the red line, but this trail just gets maintained a bunch. I, at this point, pretty much discount all those, and I'm not going to road walk around a section unless there's a good reason. I don't really want to take water out of here for obvious reasons, roadside, yada yada. There is confirmed water here at a campground, or I can go 5 miles. It's 5 o'clock. I can make 5 miles if I need to. I think it is mostly uphill. So plenty of spots open back there. Apparently the caretaker is rather hiker friendly per far out comments. Bit too much traffic noise and a little too early for me to even consider it though. And since I didn't fill my water up there, I didn't actually see a spigot, or I might have at least drank some. I don't have any choice but to not be lazy and knock out another 5 miles or so. So I won't quite make it out of Tennessee tonight. Currently have about 10 miles more to the border. I also just noticed on my tracker, I just crossed the 500 mile mark since coming out here to the East Coast, which doesn't really mean much. I mean, I think I had another 250 or so with the Sierra stuff, supposed to be a little bit more than that. And it's not like I wasn't doing a bunch of hikes before that. But still, explains why I am getting some of the hiker hunger and related things that usually set in a little later on a trip. If the rest of the plans work out, I guess I can hopefully claim about 1,000 miles. 1,000 miles for the post-illness mini season this fall, which I will be relatively happy with. So I found some running water. It was taking too long to fill though, so I think I'm going to take a chance. Things have generally been flowing, so hopefully this campsite will have water. The amount of vegetation and some of the down trees I've seen around make me very happy the trail crews had come through here. No wonder this is called Rough Creek. Okay, I was able to fill up at a much better spot. I am now looking for the first usable spot, which again has been kind of a trick up here. I have not seen much terrain in all these bushes that works for dispersed camping. It's just too rough. There is at least one thing marked ahead, but at least some of the marked campsites, like last night, night before, you know, they weren't usable. Okay, I found something that will work. There is actually a better campsite back there, but it has a fire pit that has trash. It has some sort of religious crap people were burning and a bunch of cigarette cartons, and I draw the line. I packed out the tuna and the oysters and that other thing the other night, but I'm not carrying cigarette stuff. I have lost too many people to that. Anyway, so this works for the night, and I'm actually excited to be able to see a little better in the morning. It is living up to its name back here, Rough Creek. And of course, tomorrow I do have a state line. I go from Tennessee into Georgia. I have not actually been able to tell when I'm in and out of states just due to the way this trail works. They're not signed or anything. And I was going along the border for a while, but looking forward to that. And eventually Blue Ridge and more real food. My hiker hunger is hitting hard. Home sweet home.